What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so before I get into this video, shout out to the brother Eric 11 once again showing love with a donation to the channel via the Cash App, and he has a video request. And yesterday I did a video, give my opinion on who had the stronger NBA Finals performance, LeBron James in 2016 or Michael Jordan in 1993. I said Michael Jordan. In this one, he's talking about giving my opinion on the perceived two runner-ups in those respective series. Stephen Curry in 2016 and Charles Barkley in 1993, who had the better performance in those NBA Finals. And I think when you especially compare it to their regular season and earlier playoff performances and production, this one is much more clear cut than it was Sir Charles. As a matter of fact, if you took Michael Jordan's performance out of the equation, Charles Barkley was clearly the best player outside of Michael Jordan in this series. Whereas if you took LeBron James out of the equation, then Kyrie Irving becomes the best player in that series. So that's kind of how poor overall and uneven Stephen Curry's performance was in that seven-game series in 2016. Steph Curry averaged 22.6 points, 4.9 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 0.9 steals, and 0.7 blocks. Now remember, that year Steph Curry led the NBA in steals. So he only averaged 0.9 steals. That's staggering. As a matter of fact, he averaged more and he collected more turnovers than he did assists. He averaged 3.7 turnovers in that series versus 4.3. He averaged 3.7 assists in that series versus 4.3 turnovers. And I think outside of game 4, I think it was, which was a victory for the Warriors. Matter of fact, the last victory for the Warriors, when he had 38 points, Curry, outside of that performance, his performances in the other games were very, very poor. Especially considering that during that regular season, he had averaged 30 points a game. I think his averages were something like 30 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, and over 2 steals. Shot 50% from the floor, 44% or something like that, 45% from 3, and 90% from the line. And he still did shoot 94% from the line, 93% from the line, and he did still shoot 40% from 3, but only shot 40% from the floor overall. I mean, I get it, he was banged up, but for God's sakes, Kevin Love, if you remember, of all people, was able to stymie Steph Curry in one of those late possessions in Game 7. And the biggest knock on him, outside the lack of statistical production from Steph Curry, is that his defense wasn't really good in that series, and his team blew a 3-1 series lead. Whereas Charles Barkley in 1993 averaged 27.3 points per game, 13 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 1.2 steals, half a block, 1.7 turnovers. He shot 47.6% from the floor. Now, he did shoot only 25% from 3, but in those days, you really didn't expect power forwards to be bombers from outside. And he shot 75% from the line. So he had a strong series. And he really didn't have, he didn't really have a weak game in that series. And one of those games, I think he tied Michael Jordan and this is a Michael Jordan average 41 points a game in that series, an all-time record. I think it was game 2, Barkley scored 42. And I think in game 5, even though he only had 6 rebounds, he did have, I think it's a game where Charles Barkley had essentially a game-winning steal off an Aaron inbound and layup to seal the deal for the Phoenix Suns in that contest. So Barkley was much more efficient, had higher scoring production, obviously a higher rebounding production. Actually, I had, was a had higher playmaking numbers than Steph Curry did in 2016, some 23 years later. Uh, he has an advantage in almost every statistical category over Stephen Curry. So I got to give it to Sir Charles. Sir Charles, like I said before, um, his performance in those 1993 finals were great. It's just that he wasn't Michael Jordan. And it took Michael Jordan to put up a superhuman effort to beat Charles Barkley and the Phoenix Suns. Okay. Whereas Stephen Curry, unfortunately, had some things that happened against him as far as his team is concerned. He had a teammate that got suspended, and his center was severely injured and missed like something like the last 2 games or 2.5 games of that series. You know, because in other words, we could be talking about something totally different. Although I suspect if the Warriors had won and held on to win that series, especially if a guy like Bogut doesn't get hurt, I think Draymond Green wins MVP, Finals MVP, which would be kind of, if anything, that would just indicate more how uneven and relatively poor Curry's final performance was. Matter of fact, that series alone started the genesis of Steph Curry can't get it done without his teammates. That narrative, um, because you can argue in 2015 that Curry and the Warriors benefited from numerous injuries to the Cavaliers themselves. And then 2017, 2018, you can say, well, he played on a high-powered KD team. So, in conclusion, I say that it's Charles Barkley. Tell me what you guys think.